Are you familiar with Jewish mysticism? We're going to dive into it. Try not to discount looking into religion when you're on a spiritual path. There might be things in a religion that help inform your own beliefs. You don't have to believe in it or be a part of a religion to kind of integrate that in your own spiritual practice. I think I spent 15 hours or more on this book. I read the first 300 pages in probably a day, and it went really fast. But the next 200 pages took me multiple days, and that's because it delved into Jewish spirituality, Jewish philosophy, and there was just so much there to explore. This book is Essential Judaism, A Complete Guide to Beliefs, Customs, and Rituals by George Robinson. If you want to read a single book that covers everything about the Jewish faith, this is definitely the one, and I really wholeheartedly recommend it. So what can you expect from this book? I may not have wholeheartedly agreed with George Robinson on all of his points, and that's okay. But I can say this book is immaculately researched, it's well written, it's scholarly, and it's way more than comprehensive. Just saying it's comprehensive is not enough. Starts off a little bit slow, and you kind of have to give it a chance to get some of the basic information out of the way before you really get into the meat of the Jewish faith. And on that, I got to say I was pretty ignorant. I knew way less about Judaism than I thought, other than understanding that as a former Christian, we shared a huge chunk of the Bible with the Jews. I had no other knowledge. Looking back after reading this, the knowledge that I did have, it feels superficial. Given the rich history of the Jewish people and their impact on human history, this is the kind of stuff that people should know about. I had these concepts of the Jewish people and they were God's chosen people. And I will say that I didn't necessarily understand their faith, how it worked, what was their salvation, what happened to them after they died, where they went. I didn't understand the mechanics of the religion. And as I started reading through this book, I started to understand it more. And as I was reading this, I had this lightning bolt moment that I just started to see the way Judaism flowed and what it was all about. And I still didn't quite get it. The so what of the religion didn't just pop out to me for whatever reason. And I thought there had to be more to it, and it couldn't be that simple. But I kept reading, because that's what we do, right? We keep reading, we keep learning. And I had this amazing moment where I was reading about Jewish mysticism or Kabbalah, and this thought occurred to me, but it actually wasn't a thought in any kind of traditional sense. It was more of a realization, the kind that is knowledge or wisdom or understanding that kind of manifests in an instant. It wasn't about Jewish mysticism specifically, because that's what I was reading about at the time. But I saw and kind of fully understood the beauty of the Jewish faith, from my perspective at least. I make no claim to understand it as a Jewish person does, and that's not what I'm trying to do. So just definitely excuse me that. But really, I just got what they were about, and I think that it washed over me with warmth. And the heart of it was that simple good deeds or acts of kindness added up can save all of humankind. And that really spoke to me. These simple good deeds or acts of kindness are called mitzvah. Here's what Robinson says on this. Every time that a human performs a mitzvah, she raises one of the holy sparks out of the hands of the forces of evil and restores it to the upper world. Conversely, every time that a human sins, a divine spark plunges down. The day will come, if all do their part, when the entire remaining supply of divine light will be restored to the upper world. Without access to the divining light, evil will be unable to survive and will crumble away to the dust. And I don't subscribe to the concept of sin, and I also don't like the concept of this idea of fearing this God that would hold something against humankind or anything like that. And I don't subscribe to this concept of God as a human type form making these conscious decisions. But I still appreciate the beauty in this passage, that we can collectively raise the consciousness of the world with intention. We have the power to make this a better place. I think that is a really beautiful concept. But moving on from that, which kind of seems a shallow thing to say in the moment, the spirituality described in the study of Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism was fascinating. Jewish mysticism and some of the important figures, especially Luria, show what a single human can do to change the understanding of an ancient religious tradition. It speaks to what one human can do and seeing the truth and then conveying that truth to others. It speaks to the understanding we have of these truths and how everything shifts as the universe changes. The line from the Sumerians to the Jews through their mystics and to the present day speak to this long line of, something kind of indescribable. I see great similarities to the Buddhist meditation, mindfulness, and ultimately enlightenment on the Jewish mystical path. In fact, all forms of mysticism that I've looked into and studied all share a very common thread at their heart. The vocabulary and wording might be different, and the methods may vary some, but at the heart, it just remains very similar. It ultimately speaks to the divinity or light inside all of us. On this, Robinson says, central to the Jewish mysticism is the idea truth cannot be expressed solely in words. Words can only denote that which is perceived by the intellect and senses. Truth, on the contrary, is beyond human sensory perception and cognition. It cannot be mere human language. The Bible is written in human language, but it is divinely inspired. Therefore, the mystics reason the words must contain divine truth, but not when read in a way that humans normally read them. In some way, these divine words must symbolize truth beyond words. There's a lot going on in that statement, but basically what it's saying is, if you're in this meditative state that's connected to this divine thing, then suddenly you see truth in the words that can't be seen just by simply reading it. And I think that's really powerful, because the truth of our divine light, or the universal light, as far as I can tell, is in that state that is beyond words. It's beyond thought. And so I think that's a really beautiful thing. So if this interpretation is that the truth or the divine is beyond written or spoken understanding, this is why I can appreciate Jewish Kabbalah and the other Abrahamic spiritual philosophers within the Muslim Sufis and the Christian mystics. And here I'd like to take a second and make a note on gatekeeping and what we can or can't understand. This can sometimes be a sensitive subject, but I still think it's important to cover it. Because if we address it, we can talk about the importance of how we can better communicate with one another. The author says that the Torah's origins are divine in nature, which makes it unique among human traditions. But really, this is what many religions and faiths assert, that I'm divinely inspired and you aren't. And then there's the argument by various religions, including some within Judaism, that they're the oldest religion. But we know that Zoroastrians go back almost as far, if not further, than Judaism in its current iteration, and that both may very well postdate the ancient Hindu tradition and the Vedic tradition of the Indian subcontinent. Robinson says there is one other important thread running through all of the various Jewish mysticism, setting them apart from their non-Jewish counterparts. Jewish mysticism was conceived by its practitioners as inseparable from the Torah, Talmud, and Jewish ethics and ritual. So Robinson is basically saying here that Jewish mysticism is so different from Sufi Islam or Christian mysticism and other mystic traditions that we can't possibly comprehend it or understand it, because it's integrated in some essence of their written and oral traditions, that to understand it, we'd have to be in-depth experts of this whole background of dense text. The thing is, I was reading a book a few weeks ago by a conservative Sufi Islamic cleric, a modern cleric, and he was saying the same thing, that nobody could possibly understand Sufi mysticism unless they were a long-standing Islamic theology expert. But I'm going to give you all out there watching this the credit that you deserve and say that you're all capable of reading and watching informative information to form your own idea of what your personal spiritual philosophy is. If someone over there believes in X and I see it and say, wow, that helps inform my practice of Y, there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody has a monopoly on relevant and useful human thought. What if instead of pulling back, we shared in one another's experiences and worked together to have a joint and better understanding of our place in the universe? It would be a much better world. We'd be much closer together. And the beauty of Kabbalah isn't the only thing in the really great second half of this book. It also discusses in detail the rich contribution of Jewish philosophers to the progress of important human thought, from Philo of Alexandria to Maimonides and Spinoza, and many more. There were actually too many for Robinson to cover. He explains their impact on the world and also the Jewish religion very well. And that's the thing. Jewish theologians and philosophers have had a major impact on modern human philosophy and thought. This book's discussion of Jewish philosophy could probably be its own standalone video. So if you're going to read this book, I think you'll get a lot out of the Jewish philosophy section. As I was reading this, I thought about what is God's image. There's this Jewish and sometimes Christian fundamental idea that we've been made in God's image. And something occurred to me while I was reading this about that idea, being made in God's image. What if that simply means we are all manifestations of God, or an avatar of God? That we're all not just tied to God, but one with God. That God isn't this mythological dude standing around in heaven, but we're all just these connected universal beings. Behind all the human interpretation, the translation of holy scripts, behind all of the dogma, the red tape associated with the history of religion and spirituality, we're all the divine, the Tao, the Hindu Brahman, the Buddhist Nirvana, Christ consciousness, nature, or any of the other dozens of names that we assign to this thing. You may hear me say it often, we're simply that self with a capital S, that inner divine self. Before we move on, please subscribe by hitting the watermark in the lower right-hand corner and share this with any friends and family that you think might benefit from it. And let's talk a little more about dogma. The Jewish religion is ancient and is full of rich, useful thought. But we should acknowledge that this length of time that it's been around comes with significant dogma. There's so many rules and laws in this faith. And dogma can be the opponent of enlightenment, especially when one loses focus on the message and simply falls in and gets lost inside of the dogma, inside of this mess of history and human interaction with the faith. It gets to be where some people can't see the beauty of the faith because they get lost in the message, where you can't see the forest because you're too into the trees. There's this ever-present struggle between Judaism as this construct of divine law and strict technical adherence to that. And on the other side of it, you have the spiritual nature of the Jewish people. And it might be fair to ask the question, which is it? Is it this divine, spiritual, beautiful thing, or is it the laws and the dogma that come associated with it? And the answer might be it's complicated. And for me, that's okay. I'll step back and respect their philosophy and worldview, but I do feel like it's worth bringing up. I deeply appreciate the Jewish concept of Gimel Kashadim. It's a fundamental concept in Jewish ethics and tradition translating to acts of loving kindness. It encompasses a broad range of altruistic acts and behaviors that benefit others, emphasizing kindness and compassion without expecting anything in return. Loving kindness is also a keystone within other religions and spiritual traditions. You may often hear the term when learning about Buddhism. In Judaism, there's acts that are not limited to helping fellow Jews, but extending to all humanity, reflecting this universal sense of compassion and kindness. Performing acts of loving kindness is also seen as a way to strengthen community bonds and promote a more compassionate society. You can't forget about self-love and all of that when it comes to loving kindness. If you fill your own being up with this, suddenly you're lifting up yourself, the whole world around you. This Jewish concept of loving kindness is also consistent with the idea of the Golden Rule. And in the Jewish tradition, the Golden Rule has been said to be everything, with all the other writings and teachers being mere commentary to support this idea of just treat everyone how you want to be treated. I think that is a really beautiful distillation of a single faith. And so that takes us to community and taking care of one another. In Judaism, the highest level of charity is to help a person before they become impoverished, before they need it. We can mitigate all this pain and suffering by helping people before it gets to a point where they're lost. And this is such a warm and wonderful concept, one which would make the whole world a better place. And this speaks to the importance of community in the Jewish faith and amongst its people. And that takes us to the preserving of the Jewish faith over centuries. They've been around for a really long time. And I think that matters when we put who and what they are in context, when we look at the faith itself. One thing that particularly struck me when reading this work is how much they've been made to move. They've been made at various times to go from here or there around the world. And I think this tears at you as a people, as a person, and as a faith. And sometimes they just haven't been sent from here to there, but they've been split up and divided as a people. I think one of the results of this is that the Jewish faith was forced to become something that was practiced at a very personal and individual level. And I don't think we think about that enough. This book brings that up quite beautifully. And as part of this long history, you think through all of this, you get this rich history lesson of the Jewish people and their origins, how they have evolved around the world. And it's on this action and migration and destruction. But there's also hope and endurance in the Jewish people. Their history is fascinating, and it did shape the world as we know it today. And there's so much more in this book than I could ever effectively summarize here. And the author did an excellent job trying to pack as much great information as he could into a single volume. And I'm really excited to read more from the Jewish tradition moving ahead. So are you familiar with Judaism? Did this change your view or understanding of the religion at all? What are you most impressed with about their faith? How does it possibly inform your own spiritual journey? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will absolutely get back to you, because having a conversation is what this is all about. For a peaceful community where people can be themselves and have discussions just like this, visit kishar.org. And if you'd like us to keep making content just like this, please like this video. And until next time, I wish you peace on your journey.